An island 24 kilometers off the Iranian coast, 90% of all the oil that Iran sells to the world passes through it. For decades, the Iranian regime swore that it would never let that happen. They built bunkers, installed missiles, and positioned warships around it. In March 2026, American bombers that took off from the United Kingdom, more than 6,000 kilometers away, reached that island and destroyed 90 targets in a single night. Missile bunkers, naval mine depots, air defense systems, the airport control tower. Everything Iran built to protect that place was eliminated before dawn, and now the United States is considering simply taking the island. This is what Iran fears the most, and it's already happening. But to understand the scale of this, you need to understand what the United States did in the 3 weeks leading up to this point. For years, military experts around the world have said the same thing. Truly attacking Iran would be suicide. Over decades, Iran had built one of the most feared arsenals in the Middle East, with 2,500 missiles pointed in all directions. A navy positioned in the Strait of Hormuz, the waterway through which 20% of all the world's oil passes. Drones in industrial quantities and a military plan built around a simple idea. If anyone comes, they will pay a price that the whole world will feel. American generals referred to a war like this as unleashing hell. Former presidents warned about the risk of a war that could engulf the entire Middle East. But then on February 28th, 2026, the United States and Israel went there and did it. It was 7 in the morning, Tehran time, when the sky exploded. The supreme leader of Iran, Ali Khamenei, had ruled the country with an iron fist for more than 30 years. He survived sanctions, assassinations of generals, cyber attacks, and all kinds of pressure. He was the symbol of the regime's resistance, the man the West had never managed to touch. That morning, he was dead. Along with him, 48 of the regime's highest military and political commanders were eliminated in the early hours. The chief of the entire Iranian army, the commander of the Revolutionary Guard, the country's military elite, the minister of defense, the head of the intelligence service. Decades of military experience wiped out in a matter of hours, and Iran responded in the only way it could, with force. On the first day, the country launched nearly 500 missiles toward Israel. A show of force that seemed to confirm all fears, seemed to show that even with its leadership dead, the Iranian war machine was still standing. But what happened in the next 20 days changed everything. The United States and Israel weren't just bombing random targets. They were systematically dismantling Iran, piece by piece, like someone taking apart an engine, starting with air defenses. Iran had a network of anti-aircraft systems spread throughout the country, which prevented any aircraft from flying freely over Iranian territory. Without that, the country was completely vulnerable. In less than a week, 80% of that network had been destroyed. And what happens when you lose 80% of your air defense? The American B-52 bombers, huge 70-year-old planes that carry tons of bombs but have no stealth technology, started flying over Iran, as if it were a training exercise, because for them it was almost that. The Iranian sky was open, but it doesn't stop there. Missiles were Iran's big bet. All these projectiles accumulated over the years. The plan was to launch so many at the same time that enemy defense systems wouldn't be able to shoot them all down. A rain of metal that would make any conflict impossible to withstand. On the first day, Iran launched almost 500 missiles. It seemed like the plan was working. 10 days later, that number had dropped to less than 40 per day. 20 days later, it was close to zero. And do you want to know how that was possible? Well, the United States and Israel destroyed the launch platforms, 300 of them, 65% of all of Iran's missile strike capability eliminated. The factories that produced 100 new missiles per month were bombed. What's the point of having thousands of missiles if you can't launch them? And the drones met the same fate. Iran had heavily invested in cheap attack drones, the same models it supplied to groups across the Middle East. 20 days after the start of the war, the launches had dropped by 95%. And here we come to a part of this story that almost no one is telling, and it's probably the most impressive of all. The Iranian Navy was the guardian of the Strait of Hormuz. Frigates, submarines, patrol ships, fast boats. It was the one that ensured that Iran could, if it wanted to, close the world's most important corridor for oil trade. American Admiral Brad Cooper, responsible for United States forces in the Middle East, announced on March 16th that more than 100 Iranian vessels had been destroyed or severely damaged. Just so you have an idea, before the war, Iran had 109 military ships and vessels. But one particular episode sums up what happened to the Iranian Navy better than any number. This specific detail hardly appeared in the news, and it's the most surprising one. The frigate Iris Dina was one of the fleet's proudest ships, a modern warship positioned in the Indian Ocean, thousands of kilometers away from the conflict. Its crew probably thought they were far enough away to be safe. An American submarine tracked it silently, fired torpedoes, and sank it off the coast of Sri Lanka. At least 87 crew members went down to the bottom of the ocean with it, without warning, without escape. It was the first ship sunk by a submarine in combat since the Falklands War in 1982. 44 years later, the American Navy showed that there is no safe place when it decides to act. Iran was left without a navy. And it was in this scenario, with air defenses destroyed, missiles nearly depleted, and the navy at the bottom of the sea, that the United States went for the move the Iranian regime had always sworn would never happen. Kharg Island. Before we continue, stop for a second and think, if you were the United States and wanted to destroy Iran's economy without having to occupy the entire country, what would be the one place you would need to control? The answer is Kharg. Let me show you why. The country lives off oil, it's its main source of money, which keeps the government running, the army armed, the militias paid, and 90% of that oil. Yes, 90% leaves through the Kharg Island terminal before crossing the Strait of Hormuz and reaching buyers around the world. Without Kharg, Iran has no money, and without money, the regime collapses from within. And do you know how big that island is? The one that supports an entire economy? 22 square kilometers. It's smaller than many neighborhoods in big cities, and that's where the economic heart of the whole country is. What's impressive is that this isn't new. Jimmy Carter even considered attacking the island in the 70s during the American hostage crisis to force Iran to negotiate. And he backed down because the risk was too high. In the 80s, Saddam Hussein went even further. The Iraqi Air Force bombed Kharg repeatedly and even managed to put the island out of operation for entire months. No American president had crossed that line in 50 years until now. On March 12th, American bombers that took off from the United Kingdom arrived over Kharg and destroyed 90 targets in a single operation. Everything Iran had built to defend that island was eliminated in one night. The regime responded with threats, saying it would destroy the entire island and the oil infrastructure of companies linked to the United States. But the irony is cruel. Kharg's oil matters much more to Iran than to the Americans. It's the difference between surviving and not surviving. And now, with the island's military protection destroyed, sources within the American government indicate that Washington is considering the next step: occupying Kharg. Taking the island, using it as a bargaining chip, or simply cutting off the regime's money until it collapses from within. This is exactly what Iran feared the most. Not just being bombed, but being controlled. Having the only lifeline it has left in the hands of the enemy. And here we come to the question that no one can answer yet. Is all this enough to bring down the regime? Because destroying a country's army is one thing. Making the government fall is something completely different. And what's happening inside Iran right now is the most unpredictable part of this whole story. When you kill the entire leadership of an army in a matter of hours, what happens to the soldiers, to the orders, to the hierarchy that keeps everything running? The answer in Iran's case was chaos. The new supreme leader is Mojtaba Khamenei, son of Ali Khamenei, 56 years old, who has never held a public office in his life. He was hastily elected in an online meeting because the building where the group responsible for this decision usually meets had been bombed. His first address to the country was not on video, not on audio, but a text read by a television presenter with a still photo on the screen. Think about that for a second. The new leader's first message is a static photo, read by a TV anchor. It's the clearest possible image of a regime that has lost control. To this day, no one has seen Mojtaba Khamenei appear in public since he took office. No moving images, no voice. No one knows for sure if he is okay. And what about the armed forces? Well, the Iranian government itself publicly admitted that the army had lost control of several units, which now act based on old orders. With no one coordinating anything, an army in the dark, not knowing exactly who's in charge or what to do. The clearest proof of this was an incident right at the beginning of the war. Iran accidentally hit its own ship, an army so disoriented that it started fighting itself. And while the regime tried to reorganize itself, the world watched, and each country made its own choice about what to do. China, which bought 90% of Iranian oil, remained silent. It condemned the attacks with words, called for a ceasefire, but did nothing concrete to help. When the United States asked China to send ships to help reopen the Strait of Hormuz, the answer was simple: no. China has oil reserves for more than 100 days and has other suppliers. In the end, it chose its own interests. Russia condemned the attacks with even harsher words, but also did nothing beyond that. Because Putin can't afford to directly confront an American president who, at that moment, was destroying his allies in front of the whole world. And Europe, well, it's divided. The United Kingdom, reluctant and under internal pressure, authorized the use of its bases for specific operations. Germany, Spain, and much of the continent refused any involvement. NATO stated this was not an alliance war. Trump didn't waste any time with any of them. So we return to the same question: will the regime fall? The honest answer is that nobody knows. What we do know is this: in 20 days, the United States and Israel destroyed what took 40 years to build. That regime lost its leadership, its navy, its missile capability, and its air defense in less than 3 weeks. And the island that financially supports all of this is now within American reach. The amphibious assault ship USS Boxer just left San Diego, along with it the USS Portland. And the USS Comstock. The 3 ships carry the 11th Marine Battalion. There are more than 2,500 men with F-35B fighter jets that can take off vertically like helicopters, attack helicopters, and landing craft on board. They left 3 weeks ahead of schedule. This adds to the USS Tripoli, which is already in the Indian Ocean, coming from Japan, with another 2,000 Marines. 2 full military groups converging at the same time on the Persian Gulf, with equipment specifically for ground operations. And when all of this is analyzed by history books, it will probably become clear that the most powerful weapon the United States had in this war was not any bomber, submarine, or missile. It was the ability to control the regime's money faucet. And everything indicates that soon, that faucet will be shut off. Now I want to know your opinion. Do you think Iran will surrender, or will it keep resisting even with all this? Leave your opinion in the comments. If this video helped you better understand what's happening in the world, share it with someone who also wants to know, and subscribe to the channel so you don't miss the next analyses. See you next time.